We welcome JP Morosi to the program on this day to talk about the draft class of 2020. And specifically, JP, you have news on the #1 overall pick.
Yes, Matt, good evening. It was our colleague Giancarlo first reporting Spencer Torkelson has his deal with the Detroit Tigers, just barely above slot at $8.4 million for the #1 overall pick. And remember, watching on draft night, he is going to play third base for the Tigers, as Harold talked about in the breakdown that evening about Torkelson's athleticism, how he's going to play at third base. Of course, he had usually played first base for Arizona State. The expectation, Matt, is that Torkelson will be part of the Tigers' 60-man player pool, allowing him to make up some at-bats here during the course of the season. Not clear how soon we could see him playing major league games in Detroit, but by all accounts, this is a Chris Bryant-esque bat in terms of major league readiness. And there you see the tweet. It's official. Go Tigers. So Torkelson, now a member of Detroit's burgeoning stable of young prospects here, the likes of Riley Green, Casey Mize, Matt Manning, and Tarek Skubal as well.
Fascinating because, look, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody that was drafted just a few weeks ago plays in the big leagues this year and pulls a David Clyde, Jim Abbott type thing because of the environment, because of the 60-man rosters on opening day. Who knows? Maybe not Torkelson because there's a position change, but let's get to another interesting team on this day. JP, we talked a lot about the Yankees over the winter and about how they were going to try to hold as much water as possible in April and May in the absence of some of their superstar players that were unavailable due to injury to start the season. Now that the start of the season is pushed back till late July, what's the latest in regards to health in New York?
Well, Matt, the Yankees are going to be a better, more complete team at the end of July than they would have been at the end of March. There is no question about that. Their GM, Brian Cashman, spoke with reporters today, and he said he's optimistic that Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Hicks will all be ready to play by the end of July. Not certain yet, but trending in that direction. And James Paxton, of course, as well. He had that back surgery. He has been throwing, and he probably is even closer to being game ready than perhaps even some of the outfielders are. Brian Cashman did make the point, Matt, very importantly, that for Stanton, he may well begin the year as a DH. And Brian Cashman also just talked about the general awareness that teams are going to have to just see how ready players are to simply stand in the outfield for all that amount of time just to get back into baseball shape. That's going to be a long wait, I think, through the month of July, Matt, just to see how ready players are for the physical demands of the sport every single day. The baseball shape that we talk about so much. But certainly I think in the case of Stanton, he missed so much time last year, then he came back for the postseason. He is going to be very excited to get back on the field.
For the benefit of those listening on Sirius XM, MLB Network Radio, visiting with JP Morosi, MLB Network Insider. Hey, you know, one of the challenges, the challenges are too many to list on this program, but one of the challenges that teams face now in this COVID environment is what to do with and how to keep your quote-unquote taxi roster fresh while the big league teams are competing. The challenges are even greater for a team like the Toronto Blue Jays, for whom distance and a border are in the way of getting your taxi players big league ready in a timely manner.
You're exactly right, Matt. And right now there's a bit of international intrigue here in terms of if, in fact, the Blue Jays will be allowed to play their full major league schedule in their home city of Toronto during the course of this season. Right now it appears, according to Shai Davidi's reporting over at Sportsnet in Canada, that the local and provincial governments so far are on board with the Blue Jays playing at Rogers Centre this season. However, the federal government in Canada has not yet given their full approval. So the Blue Jays said in a statement that for now, their players are assembling in Florida, in Dunedin. And they're going to wait there for a period of time until the full declaration is made one way or the other as to whether or not they can come to Toronto. And Mark Shapiro, their CEO for the Blue Jays, has made the statement that if they have to wait a couple extra days and begin their camp in Toronto next week, they'll do that. They just want to know and have clarity, Matt, on simply where they are going to be. So ideally, the Jays hope to move their operation north, but of course, there's been a 14-day quarantine thus far for anybody going from the U.S. to Canada, so certainly there would have to be some level of allowance and perhaps a change to that restriction for people involved in Major League Baseball.
I mean, that's too complicated for somebody like me to even get my head around. So from a team that is worried about where to a team that's worried about who, the Cleveland Indians, and an expiration date coming on Francisco Lindor. How does this 60-game schedule and the COVID environment affect that relationship? Does it help or hurt the Indians' ability to maybe keep him in the fold in a long-term deal?
Well, Matt, it's a great question. The Indians, to me, are the most intriguing team in all of baseball, at least for the first month of the regular season, and Francisco Lindor is the reason why. Of course, there were some trade talks involving him last winter. He did not move, but Chris Antonetti, their president of baseball operations, talked recently about how the Indians are certain to have some pretty significant operational deficits this year in terms of losing money. And when you think about that, for a small market club, he'll make well more than $20 million next year, likely in salary arbitration. If they get off to a tough start, Matt, you have to start thinking about the multiplier effect of a bad week or a bad 2 weeks. Do the Indians then become a seller? I think if they have a good season, they can win that division and go far in the playoffs. But if they stumble early, you only have one more year of control on Lindor beyond the end of this year. All those decisions are coming in, I think, ever quicker than we've ever seen before, Matt. I'll quote here the 17th century British poet, George Herbert, who said every mile is 2 in winter. If we must update that to 2020, every game is 2.7 in 2020. So 3 games, it really starts equating and multiplying. It's almost like 10 games. So again, George Herbert, Matt, a baseball writer ahead of his time.
George Herbert. Yeah, I'm just making a note to myself. Google George Herbert and see if he's ever been mentioned on MLB Network prior to this moment. Hey, if you have the Indians as the most interesting team this year, I've got the Angels at a very close 1A for myriad of reasons. Joe Maddon, Shohei Ohtani. And in fact, Joe Maddon has said Shohei Ohtani, good to go, two-way guy, and he's going to give us what we want to see this year.
He is, and I think one key thing, Billy Epler speaking with reporters today in Anaheim regarding the plans for Ohtani. Let's not forget, coming off of Tommy John surgery, Matt, he still played 106 games last year and hit 18 home runs as he was rehabbing. And now as a pitcher, he is going to begin the year, Billy Epler says, as a full two-way player. And the key thing is for the Angels, Matt, is that he was going to begin this season as a pitcher in the middle part of May. The idea was the first 6 weeks of the regular season he was going to be a hitter only and then allow him at that point in time to pick up with the pitching. But at this point, with opening day in late July, he is good to go for the balance of the season. So if the Angels get off to a fast start, if they become a surprise team, there is likely to be no Shohei Ohtani shutdown in the fall. So he is good to go, two-way player, the full-time, one of the most exciting players, as we know, in the entire baseball world. It's
nice to talk about things to look forward to this year. Nice to be informed about 17th century philosophers by J.P. Morosi. Nobody does it better. JP, thanks, man. Thanks for the visit and the info.
Thanks, Matt.